Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. My guest today, Steve Shaw, is a seasoned tech strategist who shaped the future for many Silicon Valley startups. He joins me on StrategyCast to share his secrets on crafting go-to-market strategies that resonate and why understanding your buyer is more than half the battle. Whether you're launching a new product or pivoting an existing one, Steve's insights will help you avoid common pitfalls and align your marketing to real-world demands. Get ready to take notes. This one's a game changer for any business leader aiming to scale up through savvy marketing. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of the StrategyCast newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it is full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I am so excited to have Steve Shaw join me today. Welcome.
Hi, Lori. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about this conversation. We are going to dive into GTM and talk about some of the most common product-centric failure points and how the right strategy can overcome them to make sure that you launch your brand, your product into the market correctly. And there's a big reason why I invited you to the show today to talk about that, because you truly, it's one of those just, wisdom areas that you know so much about. You spent a lifetime working on. Tell us a little bit more about your journey and why such a passion for go-to-market strategies.
Sure, absolutely. And again, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I think you're a luminary in the industry, and it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
So yeah, I've worked for, I'm based here in Silicon Valley. I've worked for technology companies. I have a technology background, and typically smaller companies, startups. My first job out of college, I was answering technical support phone calls for a company that put fax machines on computer boards inside of computers. And
wow,
that company got bought, and then that company had an IPO, and then that company got acquired by Intel. And I said, this startup thing is so easy. Why doesn't everybody do it? And it was a real, drinking from the fire hose to really understand the importance of product marketing, understanding product market fit, understanding who your buyer is, and really getting into their mindset. Because there's so many things that can trip up how somebody actually just makes that decision to buy, and all the sales motions you need to go through to make sure that you convert into a sale and make some business.
Yeah. Do you recall one of those early aha, or it could be an oh shit moment that you had about GTM, and it really drove that passion for you regarding the importance of this as a strategic endeavor?
So many. I mean, there's so many products over the years, and so many companies that I've worked with. There's always that moment where you're looking at this and you're thinking, this is going to be a home run. There's no reason why anyone's not going to buy it. And then you kind of take that step back and you think, boy, if I just done a little more customer research, or if I just done a little bit more. And so the ability to really be nimble and to be able to pivot, to listen to what your customers are saying is so crucial. I mean, there's certainly a lot of examples we can go into, but
and we're going to.
Yeah.
The numbers are actually staggering. I pulled some stats up this morning as I was prepping for the show. 95% of product launches fail every year. 95%. That's a huge number. And
it is a huge number.
Yeah, and to your point about the startup space, U.S. Bank, by the way, that number is from Harvard Business School, the 95%. And then US Bank Research just did a study, and 78% of small businesses fail because they don't have a planned marketing strategy.
Any marketing.
78% business failures. These numbers are staggering. And with you and I both working so intimately in the startup space, our clients are typically later stage startup funded. They might have a Series A or several Series A, be moving to a Series B. So they've got the funding, the needed funding to ultimately get the product into the marketplace in the correct way. But still, 78% aren't even thinking of marketing strategies.
Right. Well, again, you and I are in the technology space, and I think there is a bit of you can see it across certainly a lot of industries, but a lot of times the founder has a vision, and we've seen a lot of these where I'm just completely believing in what I'm going to do, and there's a fine line between is this something that somebody's going to buy, or am I just off on la la land? And there's certainly a lot of examples there, and I think this might not come out for a little bit, but just recently there was the release of the Humane product, a wearable AI, and it's been panned in the market. And did they not do their due diligence and all this? I can't believe they didn't, but there's a vision there for the founders. And so
Right.
as a marketing person, when I listen to founders, if you've got that passion, I can jump on board with that passion. I can run with it. But at the end of the day, let's put some numbers. Let's put some realistic feedback from the customers in place, because sometimes just having your passion doesn't get that product off the ground. It doesn't make it.
Well, your product won't sell itself. I have this conversation thousands of times to those visionaries, disruptors, and innovators who are bringing these great ideas to market, and they just don't. They underestimate the value of marketing, and quite frankly, the need for a correct budget, which is a totally different topic and show that we could go down to get them there as well. So I really want to dive into the flow of this interview with talking about some of the failure points, and then diving into areas that our listeners can really tap into to help their go-to-market strategies. So, in your experience, what are some of the most common failure points that you've either worked through or from the outside viewed with the products that are entering the market or barely make it to market?
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't know if it's my expertise, but I've been drawn to the companies that something went wrong. Call it a failure to launch, call it a whatever, but they've been in the market for a couple of years and the hockey stick hasn't materialized, or they've been in the market for 20 years and it's just been flat. And somebody wants to make a change. And that's typically where I get involved. If things are selling itself, there's certainly a skill set that goes along with that, and I'm happy to ride the rocket. But a lot of times I get called in when something's gone wrong, right? And so it's almost that third party external view of where things are. But at the end of the day, marketing is about telling the right person the right thing at the right time. And so if you're we as marketing people like to really harp on really understanding your ICP, really understanding your persona, really understanding who you're selling to and why. At one company, we were trying to sell to the engineering leader, director of engineering, VP of engineering, that sort of thing. And we were trying to sell them a toolbox.
Right.
But really what they wanted, and really if we understood what their problem was, they didn't want a toolbox. They wanted the finished product. They wanted the house built. They didn't want to buy new tools to help them build a house faster. They just wanted the house.
Such a unique nuance.
Yeah. But it's really, sometimes you have to get out there. You have to hear the feedback from the people and really understand what problem they have and what really is their, what are their metrics? What are the things that they're being guided by from their management? And how does my product help them achieve their goals?
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things that I think is really difficult from an agency and a consultant perspective is early on, before you even sign the dotted line and say, yes, we want to work with you, is understanding if the product, we can isolate whether or not there's a good need for the product pretty quickly. But is the product good enough to be successful in the market? that is, I think, always really tough for marketers to gain an insight on early enough to know whether or not this is going to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think conceptually we can kind of say, yeah, this looks like a good one to bet on. Let's go.
Yeah.
And just like VCs bet on people, I bet on CEOs who have that passion and the vision and want to make it happen and are struggling there. But a lot of times, is the product really defined in such a way that it's going to be successful? Have we put ourselves in a position to really solve that business problem? And, as a CMO, when you're wearing that CMO hat, you really are running the whole gamut. I mean, I need to be out at the front lines with sales and SDR and lead development and all that sort of stuff. But on the back end, I really need to be helping the team guide how that product gets developed and how it matches up to that lead. And, one of my buzzwords is alignment. Let's make sure we're all aligned on who we're selling to, why they care, and let's make sure we're building that product the right way.
Yeah, I love that. Another area that has been a bit of a litmus test for us when it comes to that validation, should we sign the dotted line or not, is the amount of monies that have come in through external investment or VC. And it's always we've had a couple with really large tranches that still have not been able to get to market because the tech was not, it just was not, they weren't able to prove it in a big level that was viable. And so ultimately, they end up closing the doors and everyone pulls out. Those are, pretty horrific situations when they happen, but it does happen. But there are unicorns out there that have had the big monies come in and they're in market for 2 years because they can't even sustain it. So much of this ties into what we're going to dive into next, which are really being able to isolate where marketing has more control over assuring that the go-to-market strategy is going to be successful. And one of the first things, as simple as it sounds, and we've had whole shows dedicated to developing this sort of tool, are personas.
Right. For sure. You really have to walk a mile in their shoes and really, really, really understand who they are. Again, what are the problems that they're faced with? Somebody told me once, if you're trying to sell to an executive, they probably have 3 or 5 high-level goals for that year. And if your system, your product, your solution doesn't fit into one of those 3 to 5 goals, you probably don't even have a chance, right? I mean, you're just never going to convert there. And I was talking to one company the other day, and they have an advisory board. I'm like, oh, hallelujah! What do you do? How do you work through that advisory board? We just signed them up, and we don't actually talk to them about it.
Yeah. I know it's, I've seen that too, by the way. And what I love is that when marketers are on advisory boards, they're there with purpose. They're specifically there to advise. So as a CEO or an engineer who has a paid CEO now, getting those individuals on board is so very important. And I would imagine that CMO, when talking about personas, is not going to take a framework that you might have and say, okay, here we are. Let's let's divide up into groups and develop a persona for ourselves. They're going to go at it with the research that is needed to truly understand the customer insights and input and what they need, which often drives product pivots as well. How early in the game do you feel personas or customer segmentation, customer insights are allowed to or can have the ability to pivot product development?
I think it has to happen pretty early on.
Right.
Even with one of the current projects I was working on, we had sketched out what the product was. I mean, this is early stage, like seed stage.
Yeah.
We sketched out what the product was, and we had choices. Hey, we could go this way, we could go that way, whatever. And there was a let's really think about where do we want to be? Who do we want to be as a company? Where do we want this thing to end up? And make that decision to go down that path. And it became clear very quickly that wasn't going to work. And we had to pivot over. And that drove back end changes to the product. It drove user experience changes. It drove sign up process changes, all that sort of stuff as well. So it's never too early. If somebody throws a lot of money out, it changes things, right? I mean, a lack of funding really has the ability to focus the mind. Like this isn't going to go on forever. So we really need to get that right.
Yeah.
But it can influence product from day one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. From a product development standpoint, one of the big questions that they're answering or solving is, what is the problem that we're solving? And personas need to take that to the next level. They need to answer what the problem is for the buyer so that they can get the product into marketplace based on what the need stakes are, what is needed by the market, what is needed by the buyer versus the features and benefits. The other area that I love reverse engineering campaigns and messaging. And I know that's an area that you've isolated, that you see a lot of brands failing at, is the campaign launch. It's the campaign launching or the launch. What is the big issue there?
Right. Well, there's a lot of clever things that can happen out there. I mean, one company I was talking to the other day, they had this great phrase, and I won't use it exact because I don't want to tie it right back to them, but it was along the lines of, through our software, computers can taste or smell or whatever, some sort of, we've taught or learned, computers learned how to smell or whatever.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Except how does that translate to me? Why do I care as the buyer? I mean, it's an interesting tagline, but it doesn't translate into a buying problem, or it doesn't connect to what would make me actually spend money for this product. And
how is it going to help me in my day-to-day life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or just, I was on a website the other day, and the H1 header right there on the front was, we have the most reliable product. And then the H2 header was all about trust. Trust. 3, trust. Where are my proof points for reliability? Like, if you're going to lead with reliability, I expect everything below it to be reliable. And then somehow they got sidetracked into the trust, which is fine too, but don't dilute your message like that. Like, lay into one thing.
I agree. And in that situation, reliable needs to be proven. It's almost table stakes, right? So, you better have a reliable product, or why would I not buy it? So in that situation, what is it that may make you the most reliable product in the marketplace? And then talk about that next. I don't love that lead, but I think at least, own it with some sophistication around proving it. And the other thing about that is trust. I can't stand the word trust because, again, it's table stakes, right? You mean that I'm going to want to work with someone that's not trustworthy? And you've got to say, trust us? That's never a good situation to be in. I love it. I love it when we find bad marketing out there. Because guess what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Great opportunity for you and I to, like you said in the beginning of the show, do what is right to help these brands set them up to succeed, because so much of what they are launching is broken.
Well, and so you probably are more diplomatic than I am, but sometimes I'll come to an engagement and I say, look, the reality is I have the benefit of fresh eyes, right? I have the ability to come in and look at things perhaps you haven't been able to. And sometimes I'll be very blunt and I'll say, look, I'm going to call your baby ugly. Mm-hmm. And you might not like that. And you probably do it in a much more diplomatic way. But at the end of the day, we have the ability to kind of look at it from an outsider and to have not been totally bought into whatever's going on internally and provide that objective feedback that sometimes does go over difficult, right? And sometimes it grates on people because they feel like they put their whole life into this, they put their passion into this. And to be able to soft sell that, a lot of times I'm a change agent to make that happen. Like, hey, something needs to change, and here's some places where I think you could change. And it doesn't mean everything's bad, but if we did this, we'd probably get better results.
Yeah. I think it's worth stating that there are a lot of bad products that have massive market share because of the positioning that they were able to carve out in the market. Mm-hmm. And the campaign messaging that, stopped people in their tracks to want to try the product. And we see that left and right as well. Bad products can do well in markets, and even oversaturate those great products because they may lack the right messaging in the market.
Right. I like to believe that the better product will come through, but you're right. Great marketing can at least, package it up in such a way that I think they do get market share.
Yeah.
I don't think we can completely overcome a poorly designed product with marketing,
Yeah.
but you see it, you get a sign up and then what's your renewal rate, right? If your renewal rate's falling off a cliff, the sign's there, right? I mean, you've got to
Yeah.
make sure that people love it and they stay signed up and they're committed to it. And there's just some important metrics to be watching there.
Yeah. The other area that sales is so important when it comes to the launch of any product. And there are two areas that I feel sales can really hurt or impact,
Mm.
and marketing right there at the table with them. One is as we're moving people through the funnel, the sales motion itself may not be right on strategy from the standpoint of, is it the right message at the right time at the buying cycle.
Right.
And the other piece of that is when that prospect is handed over to sales and sales people, or inside or outside, are not aligned with the key points of the market, the key strategy, the messages, so on and so forth. I feel like I've talked about that point until I'm blue in the face, and it's still something that we uncover very often. What's the deal, Steve?
What's wrong with these people?
Yeah.
Well, so I've actually been on frontline phone calls. Like I've done the cold calling and let's be honest, it's hard. You get in there and it really, as a marketer, I strongly suggest taking that time,
Right.
do a couple of customer service calls, do a couple of frontline sales calls to really understand, the scripts that you're putting together and the content you're laying out for those people. You need people who can think on their feet and be able to adjust and that sort of thing. And there's a whole set of new tools that are just, really cracking the code there. Things like the Gong product where you can really listen into calls, but that's available from so many of the calling systems nowadays where you can really get
Right.
in there and extract. But it happens all the time. And do we have time to sit down with everybody and go through all the places where everything went wrong and all the different? No,
Yeah.
it's tough. And one of the things that I heard that was great was the idea that if there was a sales rep who was killing it, who was really nailing it down, other sales reps would listen to their script and try to pull out their stuff. But that's self-driven, right? They need to get in there and get it all going. But as marketers, I think there's value in really listening to how people sell, the questions that those customers are asking. And in today's day and age, there's no better access to information than there is right now. Like we can literally get transcribed calls of everything and really see what the customers are asking for and also how the salespeople are answering it. And I think the cream rises to the top. It'll be easy to see who's really delivering.
I always love taking a launch campaign based on the customer insights that we have available to us through research, especially if it's a new product launch. And then, knowing going into it that you're going to have to augment that, a year downstream or 18 months downstream based on the actual insights of customer usage and customer feedback. And I love that part of setting an expectation when it comes to the communications planning of knowing that this is great information for us to launch, but it will need to change, and we expect it to change based on the sophistication of communication between sales, marketing, and our customers.
Right. I was talking to another company just as another example. This is a company in AI ag stuff. And we were having I was talking with the CRO and we're having a little conversation about his customers and what's going on. And he just lets this little nugget drop. He says, a lot of our customers are really scared about AI. They're really concerned about AI. Now, this is a company that's selling ag AI products.
Yeah.
And he's coming to market with an AI message. And I'm like,
yeah,
look, that's, you can't just beat your head on the wall there. Let's take a step back and really understand what that fear is. What is their real concern? And let's make sure we're addressing that in the sales scripts and the way we talk about things and the way we position the product.
Yeah.
And yet, from their perspective, this is what we're selling and this is where we're going. And it's like, let's pull back, like you said, 12 months in, let's listen to what people are really saying about this and make sure we're addressing those concerns up front, because otherwise, anything that's friction, it's just harder to sell.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned product, and it's a really interesting point at this stage of our discussion, because yes, we need to make sure that product market fit is 100% out of the chute. But what a lot of people don't realize is that they are going to have to tweak the product along the way as well. And that's the real point here is, you can't be all things to all people. And all too often, companies launch with almost a spray and pray approach with the product and all the different features. And then they find themselves honing in on maybe one or two features that most people are gravitated to. And then downstream, they're able to upsell those additional product features to ultimately, close more sales. Talk to me a little bit about your experience when it comes to what most companies experience, what most companies' realistic happenings are when it comes to a situation like that.
I mean, you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, you can go out with a bunch of stuff. The kiss of death for a lot of companies is the platform, right? Where you got that spread, whether it's a spread of features or a spread of capabilities, and have you really been able to bundle these into individual products, or you going out and saying, "Hey, we can do all this. What would you want to buy?"
Right.
Help the buyer, right? I'm here to solve this business problem for you. Just talk to me about that one thing. And platforms exist in a lot of different areas too, whether you want to call it a platform or not. But that's, if you're relying on the buyer to tell you what they want to buy, you're lost, right? You need to really guide them to that solution. And let's be honest, I mean, sometimes you have to put something out there and see what the ball, see where things guide you to and what's going on. But that iterative cycle of, hey, this is what people are gravitating to. Maybe we do need to change that product. Maybe we need to package that a little differently. Maybe we need to make that the first pillar that we're going to go to market with on our platform, and then do that land and expand approach. But a lot of founders I hear, the VC community is like, do not go to market with a platform. And I applaud them. And I don't think a lot of times founders or even the product development side of the house really understands what that means.
What's interesting about this point is that all too often we see that brands in the marketplace are not only going after it from a very, very spray and pray approach,
Right.
but they're going after it with information that is not going to be meaningful. So they don't have the right insights or the right positioning or the right competitive set. Then if you layer on, everything that we've been talking about thus far assumes that this is not a category designed product, a brand new product that is either going to disrupt an existing category and put that category out of business, or it is something very new and novel that nobody has ever experienced before. I mean, the classic case there is a mobile phone, a phone that you can actually put in your hip pocket and take with you. Yes, there was a phone, but a new category of that really over decades pushed the traditional phone aside was the mobile phone. And then there are, again, products out there that it's just never been done before. Layering that into our thought process and discussion here, how does the product market fit really tie into category design when it's something brand new and novel? Because talk about changing habits and mindsets. I mean, that is a minimum of a 3-year program until you really understand whether or not the sales are going to be there.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Lori, how often have people come to you and say, this is, it's a whole new category. We're going to change the world.
Yeah.
And it's not really. I mean, they come along. I've been lucky enough to work on one that I thought was truly a completely new mechanism for the world, and it just comes along very, very rarely, I think, in our career
I
that
think so too.
you're really able to do that.
You
And so
know,
when you step back from that, then really what you're looking for is, where is that niche in the market that I'm going to find the most receptive buyer for this product, and try to get away from the noise. And
um,
the CEO, he can be out there on whatever Squawk Box or Bloomberg, whatever, telling the big story, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, the go-to-market team needs to find buyers. They're going to put money on the table for that product, and it could be a very, very small story for the buyer, whereas the CEO or the visionary is out there telling a huge story.
yeah. I love that you brought up niche, because we say this a lot, that own a market and then go after the next. We learn so much by starting small, and starting small can be, a persona instead of two or three, or it can be a geographic area. There's all sorts of ways to look at that, but all too often we see that people are going way too broad to begin with, unless they've got gazillions of dollars to do it, which is not typical.
Right.
It just is not. But they still go way too broad, and the marketing budget, there's no way that it can sustain that, not even for a month or two.
Exactly. So classic. So, again, one of my most recent projects, we were all in on the Microsoft channel. That's who we're going after. We're going to Microsoft events. We're, in the Microsoft App Store. That was it, right? I'm targeting people who bought into the Microsoft world. And then my founder comes to me and says, I think we need to go after, Salesforce.
Mm.
Sure, we can, but we have to build a different back-end product. We need to get involved in a different set of channel partners. We need to, target different buyers. We need to, all the money we're spending over here times two, without the resources to do that. I think we really need to be focused, like you said. Like, let's own this channel and let's really understand and deliver on that before we start to dilute that message, dilute the spend, dilute everything across the board.
And timing is everything. And it's not just timing of when you launch a product, but it's the timing of the buyer mindset as well. And and all too often, I think people push aside, even a tech product can have seasonality based on when a buyer is more apt to want to buy it or interact with it, or even start the sales, in the sales funnel versus not. What is your experience there?
Yeah. So I mean, we do kind of, in this world of software and SaaS, it's a little bit easier. You don't have as much, but you're right. There are certainly seasonalities to it. I do have a fair bit of background on the hardware side of things and manufacturing and that sort of thing. And your design window might only be every 2 years or every 3 years. And so you come into a customer and they're like, we just went through a design upgrade for that part or for that component or for that system. We're not touching this for another 24 years or 24 months. So don't really bother. And, now you're talking about timing with friction and value. And unless your value is, 100-to-1 improvement kind of thing, they're just not that interested. It took a long time to get that thing built in, and they're done. And I think a lot of times we think, I'm going to show up with my bag of parts and I'm going to put them on the table, and you're going to say, great. My engineers have nothing to do other than to work on building this in or adding this component or whatever it takes. And, that it's a variability that's out there that I think people really sort of underestimate the complexity, certainly on the hardware side of the house.
It's interesting. 95% of people attend trade shows because they want to know what's new in the market. And for brands that don't capitalize on that opportunity, you've got all your potential customers, or not all of them, but a large percentage of them in one room at one time, and you can be a shining star and differentiate yourself from every other perceived or direct competitor around in that one opportunity. Yet all too often, there are product and market launches that are happening outside of that real hub of an opportunity, to build momentum and to really build top of mind awareness. And it takes, I don't know, we've never done any scientific studies on this, but it takes a lot longer to ultimately build momentum after missing an opportunity like that versus capitalizing on it.
Right. If you've got your crew coming into the stand and taking a look around, it really is a golden opportunity. I mean, it's noisy out there, right? I mean, everybody's vying for attention, and how do you break through and that sort of thing. But you've got to use every opportunity to get in front of those people and to really change how they think about what you're delivering in the market and your vision. I
Right.
think there's another curveball, which is this younger generation. Unfortunately, I do have some gray hair.
I
But
felt fine.
but there's a different buyer category that's moving into the professional world, right? It's my kids, right? It's the people who grew up on smartphones. They live in communities, they live on influencers, they live in trust. And I keep thinking, is this really going to translate to, hardware engineering, or, sort of the more manufacturing or hardware centric stuff? It is. It
Yeah.
is. It definitely is. And whereas I've had people say, you have to have a printed data sheet because I'm taking this to a job site and they're going to be walking around with it. On the other hand, that same Gen Zer that's on that job site is looking at TikTok.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way that we need to be getting into them as well. So I think we as marketers, I think that we are keeping an eye on what's going on out there, but don't be shy, right? I think things are changing in the way the younger generation is looking at products in general. The way they do things consumer oriented is going to change into B2B marketing as well.
So we call this show StrategyCast for a reason. We are a strategic communications firm and just have a passion for making sure that we've dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's when it comes to launching a product in the marketplace, and in the case of our discussion today, or even ongoing communications and those aha moments that we could create from a disruptive standpoint in someone's day to just create excitement about learning about something new. We've talked about all these problems rather, and strategic planning and the strategic process typically can inhibit all these things from happening if executed correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an area where it's either not the right strategy, you don't have a true strategist at the table who is focused on the mindset, the opportunity, the differentiation, the positioning, all these areas that are so important when it comes to launching a product. What do you have to say for our listeners today who are really questioning the value and the investment, because it's a big one, in strategic planning?
I think our audience knows in spades how important this is. I really do. I mean, the people who I think struggle with it, I don't want to tell you how many times I use the phrase, look, we have the ability we don't have time to do it right, but we have time to do it twice, or we have time to do it again, right? We're charging in, right? We don't want to plan. We just want to go. And when that fails, we have the ability to actually invest and do it a second time or a third time or fourth time. Why don't we just go slow to go fast? Why don't we spend that time up front, really plan this out, spend just a second thinking about it? I can't tell you how many times I've said that to engineering leaders, like, hey, where did that come from? Oh, well, we just thought it was a good idea and we started building it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to tell you to do it again. And so now you just doubled your time to make it happen. If you just give me a week, we could have really thought this through as an organization and really considered how that's going to get to market. And it's just a shame. And I think it's gotten even worse now on the sales side. I mean, I don't want to pick on a role, but this rise of the CRO, which is sort of this hybrid-y salesperson with some sort of growth strategy under them. They're really salespeople. And I mean, no disrespect to folks out there, but a lot of times when I start talking to them, the idea of the 3, 6, 9 month plan is sort of like, my 3-month plan is to hit my target. come hell or high water, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm like, if we just look down the road a little bit, we could probably guide this into real growth. And no one wants to, it seems like there's this sort of bad word out there, certainly in smaller companies that I work with, about brand. Oh, brand. You know what brand is? Brand is that the person you're calling knows who your company is before they pick up the phone.
Exactly.
Brand is. And if we translated that into, wow, wouldn't it be nice if your cold call wasn't super cold? I think there'd be just a different way to think about this.
Well, and it's that alignment, right? And this could be a whole nother show, but the rise of the CRO is replacing a lot of CMOs as well.
Yes.
And when you've got that sales only mindset, you go at the market without a lot of the key areas that we've talked about today, and it's not going to work. It just isn't. You can't only sell. You have to have marketing components as a piece of that. And let's not forget what we talked about at the onset of our discussion here. 95% of product launches fail. And it's because of everything that we've just talked about and the lack of strategy, either in thinking, research, or implementation that's at the table.
Right.
Yeah. We're out of time. I can't believe it.
What?
I know.
We just got started.
What in the world happened here? And guess what? We got through about half of what we had aimed on talking about. What are some final thoughts for our listeners today on the importance of this, ways or stories from the field that you can share with them that can mitigate these sort of things from happening?
Boy, oh boy. I mean, the go slow to go fast and putting that plan in place and really fighting for that. And I mean, as marketing professionals, as probably most of your audience is, they know the value of this. We've all been there where you just get roughshod over and how fast can we get this done? And boy, wouldn't it be nice if I could just have a week or two to really think about this, or a couple of weeks to really think about this? And I think that's trick. That's certainly one of the first things. I mean, as I said, my favorite quote is the David Packard quote. Marketing is too important to be left to the marketing department. I mean, we're all in this together, and engineers spend as much time thinking about that product as anybody else. And I think listening to what they have to say and listening to their insights, listening to what the salespeople are telling you, listening to what the customers are telling you, that's so much of the marketing process, is really being able to hear and distill and synthesize what comes out of that, because there is a lot of collective knowledge there. And I think being able to build that relationship with your teammates, your engineering leaders and your sales leaders and that sort of thing, such that we're all in this together and we have that alignment, goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, that sums it up beautifully, Steve Shaw. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Well, certainly my LinkedIn profile is out there, and that's probably the best place to go. After that, where am I out and about?
You can always find that with the posting that you do on LinkedIn as well, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. I'm very active on LinkedIn, always posting out there. So that's a good place to go.
Well, and if you have questions for me, you can email me at Lori@StrategyCast.com. Steve Shaw, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure.
It was a pleasure. And don't forget to sign up for the StrategyCast newsletter at StrategyCast.com as well. Thank you, Steve.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.